The APRM is the African Union's self-monitoring mechanism on governance and implement its work program towards the realization of the AU Agenda 2063. In 2016, the APR Forum of Head of State and Government, chaired by His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta of the Republic of Kenya, held a special summit dedicated to the revitalization of the APRM. In response to this, the APRM Secretariat CEO Prof Eddy Maloka implemented a revitalization strategy for restoration, reinvigoration, and renewal of the APRM, guided by the discussions and instructions from the summit, whilst drawing further inspiration from the original vision and mission of the APRM.
Revitalization means illuminating, bringing back what has been lost, putting energy into an organization or institution whereby you bring in new aspects to make sure that the organization delivers, or institution delivers on its mandate.
I think it's important to go to the beginnings and point out, first of all, with appreciation, that when the Constitutive Act of the African Union was adopted in 2003, a number of key challenges needed to be addressed in the new dispensation, because the African Union replaced the OAU, and the AU was desirous to take a new trajectory in terms of the development path to ensure that Africa would be able to address the many socio-economic challenges that are before the continent. Of course, aware that Africa, in spite of being very rich in natural resources, having very good human resource, but has remained poor, and the people also very poor. What are the reasons? Of course, one of the major reasons, of course, is a deficit in governance. And the leaders of the continent, the African leaders, in designing the AU, were also very keen to embark on governance that would ensure better management of the economy, but also ensuring sustainability in terms of development, where people would be empowered, where people would also be involved in decision making, where people would also be have democratic space. The APRM started, of course, as a very independent organ of the African Union, even in terms of financing, and the member states were to accede to the instruments of APRM voluntarily.
So as regarding the APRM, we started with the revitalization strategy in 2006. That is the time when the new Chief Executive Officer, Prof Eddy Maloka, was appointed by the APRM heads of state, headed by the chairperson, who is His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta.
When I took over the office, I had my own ideas on how APRM should run. And I realized that Kenya could not just spearhead APRM alone. So it is thinking differently. And I was assisted by the chair of the APRM in Kenya, Professor Michael Chege, very experienced person, very dedicated person. Said, no, why don't we propose to the head of state so that this mechanism can be raised, can be revitalized, because we know the potential of this mechanism for uplifting Africa is great. So when the idea was eventually upscaled to the presidency, it was accepted. And he said, yes, I'll take it up. And it was taken up.
The revitalization strategy of the APRM was necessitated by the fact that the APRM Continental Secretariat for some time did not have a CEO. And so a lot of activities were sort of in limbo in terms of how they were being implemented at continental level and also at national level. And then further, that gap in leadership kind of made the whole APRM process stall.
So enthusiasm was waning. Member states were not coming to our summits as much. There wasn't as much financial support for the mechanism. As a result, the heads of state at the APR forum held in January decided that they needed to revitalize the African peer review mechanism, and that included bringing in a new CEO and requesting that we look at as a priority.
So when I arrived at the APRM, of course, I thought we needed to do three things, and I came up with these 3 R's. We needed to revitalize it, re-energize it, and all the things that we needed. But then I came up with these 3 R's. But restoration is just getting the organization to function at the optimal level. So when I arrived there was a review for Chad, there was a review for Senegal, but there wasn't much progress. So when I arrived there, I made sure that we do the reviews. And I worked with the panel very well, and as I pleaded with members of the panel that let's focus on the reviews, and I gave them, find them the resources, and then the reviews happened.
Revitalization was really needed for the APRM. It was stagnating, it was at a low point. Countries were not being reviewed, new countries weren't joining, there was no innovation, there was a lack of leadership, and the APRM really needed some injection of political will and managerial skill to achieve its objectives and to reach higher as well.
It was about revitalization, revitalizing, reinvigorating, and bringing more parties on board and getting the mechanism moving.
The results were clearly, first of all, the recommitment of the member states to the process of the APRM. Also, it was the renewal and the refreshment of the tools, like the questionnaire that we sent to the countries. It was revitalized, it was reformulated so as to be really conform with the needs of the continent for the next period. We had also, and this is very obvious now, a greater visibility all over the continent for the APRM itself.
We had what we call, one of them, in fact, the immediate stabilization of the APRM was a short-term goal that we wanted in the first 2 years, which we managed to do. And then after that, we had sort of the medium-term goals, which was to make sure that the APRM member states are proud of it and participate in it, which we're also able to do in the middle years. So this was 2016 to 2020.
We saw more countries coming on board and being much more interested in the APRM. As at now, we are at 74% of the member states of the African Union coming on board, which means we've had more countries come on board and be part of the process.
First of all, one of the best changes we noticed is that, if I remember well, initially, APRM was just started with about 15 countries, grew to 25. Now we are talking 41. And obviously, this is because it was demonstrable that there were benefits and gains, and so countries would come forward and accept to be reviewed. It is also clear, and studies have shown around the world, that countries that acknowledge those challenges, embark and bring on board all segments of society, they do much better. You see, more stable and more
sustainable development in the country. So I think the strategy gave The APRM purpose gave it shape, it gave it political impetus and managerial skill, and it also got the countries to take this system more seriously. We saw 5 or 6 new countries, mostly from Southern Africa, join in this period.
The results of the first part of APRM came to attract other partners in funding the organization, and that facilitated employment of more staff. The staff that we were looking for was to facilitate the reaching out to the public. Because when you are a country and coming with a program that people didn't know, even at grassroots level, it had to be facilitated by the Secretariat, which was led by the CEO.
By 2018, that had happened. And we were also recognized within the AU system for what we had done. And as a result, we had a whole bunch of what we call the expanded mandate. The AU Assembly itself gave us additional mandates beyond the original ambit on governance improvement of the APRM. So that was the middle years. And then by the last 2 or 3 years, we were now looking within, for our place within the AU constellation, within the Africa governance architecture, within the African peace and security architecture. And we did find our place within that system.
The 3 Rs really came about in 2016 when Professor Eddy Maloka was appointed as CEO of the APRM. So the new CEO decided to restore the APRM as well as revigorate it, as well as renew it. And the revitalization strategy really was having a turnaround strategy, restaffing the APRM Secretariat, having to start over reviews again, which is the primary mandate of the APRM, funding, that's part of resource mobilization, as well as getting civil society back on board on the work of the APRM.
So when Prof came in, it was more of he opened the doors and an individual African could come in and give views and give their feedback. So that is where the renewal began. Then the restoration of the aspect where many African citizens thought that the APRM was more of an elitist club and it's something out of reach for them. So when it came to the country review reports, and I remember that time I worked on the country review project here in Kenya, and would go around with the APRM office here, the APRM Kenya office, and we'll go around the country taking the views. And the individuals or the people in the local level, they were like, no, we've never seen AU come to us. So for me, that was a restoration of the mechanism.
And my first impression of it was really that, it presents a new platform. It presents new ideas, new energy, an excitement for new ideas, really taking up new ideas and being receptive to them and allowing other people to come in and work with the APRM Secretariat. So the renewal, reinvigoration and revitalization of the APRM has been something that we've been quite excited about as external people.
It's about finding African solutions to African challenges. So if it is finding African solutions, then we need to Africanize what solutions we come up with, because our challenges, yes, are there, but knowing that Africa is not just one country, we are the 54 sovereign states, almost 7 time zones, 7 different climatic conditions, over 3,000 tribes, and over 1.4 billion. So in this aspect, it is where they come and localize the issues.
But also we've seen that with the revitalization agenda, there are more countries that are actually participating in the APRM process, especially now that they have introduced things like the targeted reviews, which are happening in more countries and more beneficial because a country is able to look at the challenges that they are facing and asking for expertise.
As they have set out in the APRM review, they must learn from each other. In this country, there's one thing which I have also seen, where the country is benefiting from APRM. The counties, which are the sub-national governments, they are setting up a framework to learn from each other similar to the APRM. And I was extremely happy.
You know, when you get invigorated, then first of all, you are happy. First of all, you see capacity of organization growing, and you see that good energy, the energy given to APRM really is delivering on this mandate. We had now more reviews came on board. We reviewed Egypt, which is a founder member, by the way. It was reviewed. It had not been reviewed during that time. Then other reports which had gone to the drain were tabled. We had the Senegal report, we had the Djibouti report, we had the Sudan report. They are all tabled and reviewed by African heads of state, which was very good.
I think the role players at the very top is the Secretariat itself, you know, the coming in of the new CEO. And after that, we saw really the hiring of a lot of new staff, mostly who were young people. And if we are speaking about revitalization and renewal, it's important to get fresh blood, fresh ideas, fresh people coming in.
So the critical role players really were member states of the APRM, but in particular, the Republic of Kenya, under President Uhuru Kenyatta, who made sure that the APRM had to get revitalized. But I also want to appreciate the role of young people, the youth, who came on board and started popularizing the APRM again.
Number one, I would say it is the APRM Continental Secretariat. This was led by Prof. But also during that time, yeah, we must give credit to the President of Kenya, that is His Excellency Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta. He was the chair of the APRM. And he came up with that strategy that we need to bring APRM from its deathbed, because that's exactly where it was. And he put not only resources, he put also in terms of human resource, capacity, and time. And during that time, he would take the issues of the APRM to the Heads of State Summit, that is the AU Summit. And so much was given and allocated to the APRM process. So for me, those two, that is His Excellency President Uhuru and Professor Maloka, were very instrumental.
Originally, we had three main partners. That was UNDP, Economic Commission for Africa, and the African Development Bank. We said we have to increase other partners. We have to bring in more partners to strengthen the work of APRM. These partners assist us technically and even financially. So we said we need to bring in. So we had to bring in other partners. We should also bring on board other AU bodies so that they can be looking at our reports. Because we had products, but they are not readable. They are not being consumed. We said we need African Union organs also to look at our reports and see what we are doing. So we had to table our reports in different organs, like Pan-African Parliament, which is based in Midland, the African Commission of Human and People's Rights, based in Banjul, and even the Peace and Security Council, which is based in Addis Ababa. So that was some of the areas where we thought we could rejuvenate, we could revitalize APRM so that it can come to its own feet and then deliver its mandate more than it was doing before 2016.
I think one highlight really from the strategy is on resource mobilization, because if you don't have funding, really there isn't much you can do. So as part of the strategy was getting partners back, UNDP, Mo Ibrahim Foundation, as well as coming back to the core budget of the African Union, something that was successfully done between 2016 and 2020 when the APRM was implementing its strategic plan and work plan.
I think a highlight for me from the strategy is the fact that if you are open to new ideas and there's will and goodwill to actually really consider all the role players and the ideas that they bring, and you are really just into receiving critical feedback and implementing that, it really takes us far.
I think the most important aspect is political will. And what the new CEO who came in 2016 was able to do was to galvanize our APR forum and to be interested in governance improvements, to have this club of AU heads of state who can regularly talk about governance amongst themselves in a confidential manner and talk about best practices and common challenges. And that's in a nutshell what we do. And we were able to, I would say, underline the importance of such a forum so that we could work together for improving governance together.
That early period for me was, it really opened up, and I sense a lot of goodwill and so on. And it really helped me with my colleagues, with the panel, with member states, and the kind of support you receive. For me, the highlights was really how at that beginning, just to get the chemistry going. And I think we've been able to maintain that chemistry up to now. So we make sure that every year we have a member state joining. So, and the African Union, because of that, they took a decision at the summit and said that we must have full universal accession by 2023. I don't know whether 2023, maybe 2023, that's my final year, I don't know. But we will do our best. We now 42 or something, and then we'll be joining. Hopefully we'll have another country or so joining us at the next summit. We are working on it.
There's been new life in the APRM, and it's really revitalized the process. Reports are coming out. Second reviews have been done, targeted reviews are being done. So I think there's a lot to be proud of looking back over the last 5 or 6 years.
Then another thing, also the AU realized that APRM is now really on its feet. It even invited us to be integrated within the African Union.
Out of this restoration effort, the African Union actually agreed to make APRM one of its institutions, but with sufficient autonomy. It's an African Union organization which is given autonomy. Why autonomy? So that it can be able to look at African governments critically and assess them and give them their reports the way they are. Because if they are not given autonomy, then African governments will not benefit anything. They will just repeat what they know. But since they are autonomous, they will be able to look at the situations inside or the reports which they make in a very neutral way. And that can help Africa move forward.
We saw the introduction of the APRM's expanded mandate, which gave it more responsibilities, including monitoring the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals and the African Union's Agenda 2063.
So our APR Forum, as well as the AU Assembly, had approved this new strategic plan 2020 to 2024. And what it entails is consolidation of our gains and also looking within APRM to see how can we contribute to the governance parts of Aspiration Agenda 2063, and also looking at governance as a means of integration for the African continent. Those are its broad goals and objectives.
We have got a new strategy plan which is planned for 2020-2024. And the key areas there, again, we are looking at, because our mandate, the core mandate is promoting good governance on the African continent. And how do you do it? By carrying out country reviews on governance of Africa. So the main key area in that strategy is encouraging and initiating new reviews on the African continent. and we are doing that.
I think the new strategy came with some monitoring and evaluation of the work that is done by countries. Also, even the visitors who are coming from the Secretariat, they go there to check how far they are in terms of progress. That, to me, is quite an important achievement for us.
Further to that, the APRM Secretariat has also introduced the governance gap analysis, which is actually something that is quite different. The extended mandate of the Continental Secretariat is another thing that has happened that is a positive in terms of showing the confidence that the continent has in the APRM as far as the governance agenda is concerned. We saw the extended mandate. They're now looking at Agenda 2063, as well as monitoring the SDGs.
So I think the new strategy is a continuation of the previous strategy. It's building on the solid areas, and it's also looking to innovate and bring new life into the APRM. I think it's solid and will be able to give the APRM the prominence that it deserves in helping our continent govern itself better.
Of course, given the new scenario that is emerging in the world, APRM needs to adjust, because post-COVID, we are going to have a totally different world. The digital economy has come in, which was not there at that time. We should also be part of the review to see how countries are prepared to adopt the digital economy. And of course, the first changes that are coming, climate change was not as so important as it is today. And so there are new challenges that have emerged, which requires that the APRM must also be positioned to be able to address these key issues that confront Africa and the global environment.
If we continue on this trajectory, we are very likely to get to 100% accession at continental level. I think that the APRM is a tool that really has contributed very positively on the continent. And if we continue this way, we are bound for great things as a continent.
So really things were coming together, and really that helped in really giving new energy and extra energy to the APRM and so on and so on. But now where we are now, we are in the third phase, which is the renewal. So I say closeout report because we have completed the revitalization, but we are in the renewal phase.
The APRM strategy is now very relevant to the situation in the continent.